Ukraine and its allies drummed up support to protect Ukrainian cities from Russian missiles at an event in Berlin on Tuesday, urging international businesses to put their faith and billions of dollars into post-war reconstruction. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russia had already wiped out enough energy infrastructure to power the cities of Berlin and Munich combined. He was hoping to come away from the conference with pledges of billions of euros for defense and agreements on building a new and more modern energy system.
This meeting in itself is already a result, because it is very difficult not to lose allies and partner countries. And uniting countries who are partners and non-partners is a difficult mission in itself for Ukraine, when the war has been going on for months.
Since March, Russia's campaign of aerial bombardment has inflicted heavy damage to generating capacity, and blackouts are having to be scheduled across Ukraine. Kiev hopes the Recovery Conference will cement its credentials as a future member of the European Union. It is trying to prove it's worthy of huge injections of reconstruction financing, even as Russian forces continue to make slow advances in Ukraine's east. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz cited World Bank estimates that Ukraine could need $500 billion over a decade. He added companies had to be offered a business case for investing. He also talked up Ukraine's potential in sectors including renewables, IT and pharmaceuticals.
The reconstruction of the country will require massive investment. This will not be possible without private capital. As a reminder, we are talking about the reconstruction of a future member state of the European Union.
Scholz added that Germany was sending more air defense systems, missiles and munitions to bolster the capital Kiev's defenses against a barrage of Russian attacks on cities. The mayor of Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, said Western weapons and the permission to use them to strike targets just inside Russia had helped to restore calm. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced agreements with banks worth $1.5 billion to help attract private investment for Ukraine. Zelensky also addressed the German parliament during his visit, where his speech was boycotted by two parties, including the far-right Alternative for Germany, whose support surged in European elections last weekend.
A senior Hamas official said on Tuesday the Palestinian militant group had accepted a United Nations-backed ceasefire resolution and is ready to negotiate details, a move the U.S. called a hopeful sign. Qatari and Egyptian mediators said they had received a formal reply from Hamas to the truce proposal, and Hamas and its ally, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, issued a joint statement on Tuesday expressing, quote, readiness to positively reach a deal to end the war in Gaza. The UN Security Council approved U.S. President Joe Biden's proposal for a truce on Monday. Biden's proposal would pause fighting in the Gaza Strip and facilitate the return of Israelis held hostage by Hamas, ultimately leading to an end to the war.
We have the prospect of an immediate ceasefire, building toward an enduring one, and tremendous relief for people in Gaza.
In a visit to Tel Aviv on Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken responded to Hamas's statement with measured optimism.
Well, I say it is a hopeful sign, just as the statement that they issued after the president made his proposal 10 days ago was hopeful, but it's not dispositive.
Both Israel and Hamas suggested on Tuesday the plan fit their clashing goals, raising doubt whether any genuine headway toward a deal had been made. The war began when Hamas-led Palestinian militants stormed into southern Israel from Gaza on October 7th, killing more than 1,200 people and seizing more than 250 as hostages, according to Israeli tallies. Israel's retaliatory air and ground onslaught in Gaza has killed more than 37,000 Palestinians, the Gaza Health Ministry said on Tuesday. Israeli strikes have reduced most of the densely populated coastal enclave to wasteland. Blinken traveled from Israel to neighboring Jordan for a summit on the humanitarian response for Gaza's 2.3 million residents, most of whom are now homeless. The American diplomat announced more than $400 million in assistance for Palestinians.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi began his third term in office on Monday by retaining nearly all his top ministers. That defied speculation that he would cede key posts to allies. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will serve a second term. She's credited for steering the world's fifth largest economy through a period of strong growth. The Bharatiya Janata Party's allies will sit outside of the four prime portfolios: home, finance, defense, and foreign affairs. They took 5 berths in the 30-member cabinet, overseeing industries including steel and aviation. That points to broad policy continuity. The resilience of the stock market after the shock election result also underscores stability. The Nifty 50 index has risen 6% since the day votes were counted and has since hit a fresh record high. But the full price of coalition rule could emerge later. Allies may ask for special funds for their states, or they could simply face less competition from BJP-ruled states for investment when manufacturers like Tesla come calling. The BJP's loss of seats in rural areas will force the new government to prioritize support for the poor. The nature of its spending might change. The next clue will come in the budget in July. For now, Modi has cleared the first lap of a long
Hunter
race.
Biden, the son of U.S. President Joe Biden, was convicted on Tuesday of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. Prosecutors charged him with 2 counts for allegedly lying about his drug use on paperwork to purchase a handgun, and 1 count for unlawfully possessing a handgun while using drugs. A 12-member jury found him guilty on all 3 charges, making him the first child of a sitting U.S. president to be convicted of a crime.
No one in this country is above the law.
U.S. Department of Justice Special Counsel David Weiss, who brought the Hunter Biden case, spoke after the verdict.
This case was not just about addiction, a disease that haunts families across the United States, including Hunter Biden's family. This case was about the illegal choices defendant made while in the throes of addiction.
The Delaware trial included prosecution testimony by Hunter Biden's ex-wife, former girlfriend, and sister-in-law, who gave first-hand accounts of his spiraling addiction in the weeks before and after he bought the gun in October 2018. Hunter Biden's lawyers, meanwhile, sought to show he was not using drugs when he bought the gun and did not intend to deceive. The judge set no date for sentencing, but added the timeline is usually within 120 days. Sentencing guidelines for the gun charges are 15 to 21 months. But legal experts say defendants in similar cases often get shorter sentences that may not involve prison. Hunter Biden has never held elected office, and the crimes for which he was convicted occurred when Joe Biden did not hold office. The Delaware trial follows the May 30th criminal conviction of former President Donald Trump on 34 counts for covering up a hush money payment to a porn star. Trump is the first former U.S. president to be found guilty of a felony. The Republican is again seeking the White House in the November 5th election.
Britain's labour market showed more signs of cooling in April as the unemployment rate rose. Official data out Tuesday showed the jobless rate for the 3 months to April rose to 4.4%. That's up from 4.3% in the previous period and the highest reading since the 3 months to September 2021. The data show the number of employed people has fallen by 207,000 since the end of 2023, while unemployment has risen by 190,000. The numbers are an awkward development for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak ahead of an election on July 4th. Opinion polls show the opposition Labour Party is on course to win the national vote. Keir Starmer's party holds a roughly 20-point lead over the governing Conservatives. Sunak's pitch to voters rests on the idea the economy is improving under his management. He can at least point to a robust increase in wages adjusting for inflation. Average weekly earnings excluding bonuses rose 2.3% in the 3 months to April compared with a year ago. It was the strongest such reading in nearly 3 years. But Britain's inactivity rate, which measures people not in work and not looking for employment, rose to 22.3%. That's the highest since mid-2015 and highlights what the Bank of England sees as a source of inflation in the labour market.
Billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk on Tuesday moved to dismiss his lawsuit against ChatGPT maker OpenAI. The suit, originally filed in February, had accused the company and its CEO Sam Altman of abandoning the startup's original mission of developing artificial intelligence for the benefit of humanity and not for profit. Attorneys for Musk asked the California state court to dismiss the lawsuit without giving a reason for the move. The lawsuit marked a culmination of Musk's long-simmering opposition to OpenAI, a startup he co-founded. The company has since become the face of generative AI through billions of dollars in funding from Microsoft. Then, last July, Musk founded his own artificial intelligence startup, xAI. In the lawsuit, Musk asked a judge to force OpenAI to make its research and technology available to the public and to prevent the startup from using its assets for the financial benefit of Microsoft and others. In a court filing, OpenAI described the lawsuit as a contrived attempt by Musk to advance his own AI interests. OpenAI and an attorney for Musk did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Musk dismissed his case without prejudice, which means he could refile it at another time.
2 militants fired at a bus carrying Hindu pilgrims in the Indian Federal Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, local police said on Monday. The bus plunged into a deep gorge as a result of Sunday's attack, leaving those on board either dead or wounded. Ajay Gupta is one of the survivors.
Our bus fell into the gorge due to the shooting. After tumbling down 5 to 6 times, the bus got stuck on a large rock. Everyone was injured in the fall. Passengers were lying here and there, some unconscious and some thrown out of the bus. Even after the fall, the firing continued for 10 to 15 minutes.
Investigators were seen gathering evidence at the wreckage site, while the nearby forested area was heavily guarded by security. The Himalayan region, which is also claimed by Pakistan, has been rocked by militant violence since the start of an anti-Indian insurgency in 1989. Tens of thousands of people have been killed, although the violence has reduced in recent years. The last major attack on Hindu pilgrims in the region happened in 2017, when a bus was targeted, killing 8 people. Sunday's incident came a day after a local police chief said the number of militants in the territory was dropping, but 70 to 80 foreign militants remained active. The injured were moved to nearby hospitals, and a search for the attackers is underway, police said in a statement.
The S&P 500 and NASDAQ hit record closing highs for a second straight day on Tuesday, thanks in part to a big boost from shares of Apple. The Dow dipped 0.3%, the S&P climbed more than 0.25%, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ jumped nearly 0.9%. Apple shares jumped more than 7% to a record high close, one day after unveiling new artificial intelligence features for its devices. Shana Orsic-Sissel is CEO of Bonrian Capital Management.
What it could do and should do is increase demand for iPhone sales, which is kind of the bread and butter of Apple. And that while none of these tools that they're adding are going to blow you away, they are quite interesting, and you need to have an iPhone 15 Pro in order to gain access to them or upgrade in the next upgrade cycle. And I think that is overall positive for Apple's business, and that is why the stock has jumped up today.
The S&P Technology Index climbed more than 1.5% and also posted a record closing high. Among other movers, shares of General Motors gained more than 1% after the automaker announced a $6 billion share buyback plan. GM also cut its annual EV production forecast. Shares of Oracle, which closed down 0.5%, rose 8% in after-hours trading following the release of quarterly results. And the GameStop saga continued. Shares of the video game retailer tumbled 8% earlier in the session before surging to finish up 23%. The company on Tuesday said it has completed an at-the-market equity offering of its shares to raise roughly $2.14 billion. Wednesday looks to be a big day for markets, with the latest inflation data, the Consumer Price Index report, released before the bell, and the Federal Reserve's policy announcement later in the day. The central bank is likely to leave interest rates unchanged, but will release its updated economic projections.
Conference, the company finally revealed its goals, and they're very typically Apple. It wants to carefully pick and choose what to integrate. The idea isn't necessarily be first, but more to make sure everything works seamlessly. Apple's first goal is clear: make its gadgets work better. Things like automated email and text chat summaries and replies and tools to edit photos are already widespread elsewhere. What will matter more is how well these tools function when Apple rolls them out widely this fall. More intriguing is how Apple promises to make Siri, its often disparaged digital assistant, better by understanding context and stitching together information found across users' phones. If a customer can ask, for example, whether they have time for one more meeting before their flight, and Siri can answer successfully by incorporating all the relevant information, such as what flight are they talking about based on text and traffic time to the airport, then the features will be very useful indeed. Another goal Apple says is to preserve user privacy. So most processing will be done locally on users' phones, and more complex questions will partially done on Apple servers. Happily, and perhaps not coincidentally for Apple, that means users will need shiny new iPhones to take full advantage. A partnership with OpenAI, the firm that developed ChatGPT, may also grow in importance in years to come, but that could be an awkward fit with Apple's privacy aims. Now, the company plans to roll AI carefully, and that could make customers wonder if Apple has fallen behind if the technology keeps advancing quickly. But Apple's brand has long been about gadgets with intuitive tech that just works. And for investors, there's possibly another big benefit. Apple may have to invest much less than its big tech. For the last year and a half, tech giants Microsoft, Alphabet, and Amazon have raced to develop artificial intelligence features and build out data centers needed to train these smart programs. Apple, the $3 trillion company, has seemingly sat on the sidelines.
Chinese automakers aren't turning away from Europe. That's according to a leading auto group on Tuesday. The China Passenger Car Association, or CPCA, said the country's vehicle makers will unswervingly develop in Europe, adding they will integrate into local markets. He made the comments despite the EU launching an anti-subsidy investigation into Chinese-made electric vehicles. The EU alleges China's car makers benefit unfairly from state subsidies and accuses them of dumping excess production on Europe. China denies both charges. This week, the EU is expected to announce tariffs it plans to impose on Chinese EVs. The CPCA's comments also came while announcing a rare drop in Chinese car exports for May. Data showed exports of new energy vehicles fell 4% year-on-year in May and were down 18.8% from the previous month. Overall, passenger vehicle exports fell 9% from a record high in April. Domestic vehicle sales were down 2.2% following a bigger decline in April. It's a sign weak demand is becoming entrenched in the world's biggest auto market.
Australia's winemakers have something to celebrate. Official figures show exports to China have soared after Beijing lifted tariffs on the product. Shipments hit $57 million in the month after the move. Now the industry will be hoping it can get back to the $800 million per year seen before China imposed the duties in late 2020. That was part of broader restrictions imposed on Australia after Canberra called for a probe into the origins of COVID-19. Now an export boom would be timely for the country's winemakers, who are grappling with huge oversupply. Adding to the encouragement, Australia's Trade Minister said most of the new exports were at the premium end of the market. The government also said it would help fund better data for the industry and support marketing in China and elsewhere. However, analysts say it may be hard to drive exports back to 2020 levels, with Chinese wine consumption sharply down in recent years. Almost all of Beijing's restrictions on Australia have now been lifted, except for barriers to imports of lobsters. With Chinese Premier Li Qiang set to visit the country this weekend, ministers say they're hopeful producers of the seafood delicacy could soon get good news.
Alors effectivement, c'est pas commun de faire des feux de 600 hectares aussitôt dans la saison, encore qu'on a eu des années un peu maudites. Mais là, cet après-midi, on s'est rendu compte qu'on avait finalement du vent, température forte et puis de l'hygrométrie très basse, qui sont vraiment des facteurs de propagation importants pour les incendies. Donc là, on est en train de tout faire pour le stopper, notamment en tête, et d'éviter qu'il nous passe sur certains secteurs un peu stratégiques.
Ela subiu numa árvore que ela ficou